Hello the grandest of archivists, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing the Fractured Crown set review, and I am super excited to get into it today. Now, since all the spoilers are officially out, this set looks amazing. It's shaping up to be a wonderful set, and I can't wait to get my hands on it. Now, this video is going to be broken up into 5 pieces. The first one is going to be Regalia's, then we'll follow up with normal, fire, water, and wind element review. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So starting us off strong is going to be our 3 new UR spirits, one for each element. And these are very interesting because it's a design space that I wasn't sure if Weebs of the Shore were going to go along this route, and I'm super happy they did. So these spirits, on enter, you glimpse 6, and then you draw 6 cards. So it's a pseudo mulligan with minus a card of your normal spirit. However, they have an additional effect, which is a lineage release. You recover 6, and to lineage release, you banish this card from your champion's inner lineage, which is really cool because it is a fast speed. You can go ahead and do that to just recover that 6. However, you do lose this spirit, which means you do lose your element that you are currently in tune with. So you should probably have a advancement element or a bunch of normal cards just so you don't get stuck with unplayables in your hand. But I think it's a great way to stay alive just that slightly bit longer against someone who thinks they can burst you down, who might have forgotten you're playing this spirit opposed to the other spirit. Going through our 3 categories, we have our playability, our design, and impression. And we'll go ahead and give a rating for every card we go through for each of these categories. Playability wise, I think these cards are extremely playable. I don't see them not being played. To me, it's going to be a 50-50, just depending on what kind of strategy you do want to go with. So with playability, I'm going to go in and give that 5 stars. These will see play. People will either choose their favorite one between the 2 spirits. Some people want that extra card. Some people want more options. For design, I really like the design of these cards. It's in a space, as stated before, that is unexplored, and it has so much potential. I'm going to go ahead and give them a 5-star for their design. I think it's insanely great that they're giving us more tools and starting options, so the game just doesn't feel too stale and deck building feels more impactful. Impression of these cards, I'm going to go ahead and give them 3 stars. They're just not too, wow factor for me. They're really cool, and I'm glad we get those, but them taking up a UR spot is... And to me, I feel like it's going to be very unamusing to open multiple copies of these as your URs in the set. Only reason for that, but I like the artwork. Everything else is super great. Let's get into the next one. And we have Merlin Kingslayer. It's going to be a Crux level 3 champion, Mage Warrior Human class. It's a Merlin lineage, and at the beginning of your recollection phase, put a level counter on Merlin. Then if it's an even amount of level counters, you draw a card and she gets +2 attack. I think this card is super cool. They are introducing alternate playable characters for your lineage break champions. In addition, this is our first hybrid class champion, which allows us to take advantage of both class bonuses for mage and for warrior, allowing for really cool design space with deck building. Playability, I honestly don't know how well this will stack up compared to other decks, because right now the game is very fast. Weebs of the Shore have said they really want to slow down the game a bit, probably between 2 to 4 turns, and this card feels like a card that needs it to be slightly slower to get full potential off of it, because you'll only get your benefit every other turn. I'm a huge fan of the draw power. The attack is a take it or leave it. I'm going to go ahead and give her a 4-star for playability. Just because I'm sure people are going to test her out, mostly because of you have the people who really love Merlin, and you have the people going to see how competitive and viable this is. Now, just looking at these cards, she has 2 alternate CSR versions. We have the sort of no crystal and full crystal. I think those are really, really cool design concepts, especially since we can have alternate CSRs. With that though, I'm going to give the design 4 stars as well. I believe the card mechanically is super sound. I like the every other turn concept, the drawing a card. It synergizes so well with levels and mage cards. And I'm really excited to see what kind of deck combinations you can put together with that. Impression-wise, I'm going to give it a 2-star. It's not really one of those cards where I look at it and go, I need to play this right now. I feel like this card will get played from me sooner rather than later, but I don't think this is a day one build a deck around this and be happy. I gotta stick with Lorraine for a little bit longer here and test out deck ideas with her before I do some champion hopping. Plus, I'm really excited for Cleric champion to come out, and we already have a mage and a warrior, so that's the reason Merlin's getting that. But on to the next one we go. Azure Protective Trinket, a 0-cost normal Regalia. You banish it and banish up to 3 fire element cards from a single graveyard. Sort of a sideboard tech card. Probably not going to be seen in a main board a lot of the times. Very niche. It's against 1/3 of the decks out there. And the 1/3 is just a number of the amount of elements. I know fire is a more prevalent element. I just don't believe this card is going to be a, hey, I'm going to need this against every fire deck. And with that, I'm going to put the playability at 3 stars. It is a playable card, however, it's relegated to sideboard 100% of the time. Design space, I feel like there is a lot to be asked for a anti-fire element card, and I don't feel like it really hits the nail on the head here. It shuts down maybe 1 or 2 cards or combos, but it doesn't really do much after that, and I don't think it fulfills its space like some of the other trinkets do fill their space. I'm going to give the design 2 stars. I just really wish it did something slightly different. Perhaps instead of banishing 3 fire element cards from a single graveyard, you can banish that to just remove a graveyard from the game, or you can banish just the graveyard itself. It being limited to just 3 target fire element cards is what's really hindering it for me, in my opinion. On the topic of my opinion, the impression of this card, I like the concept of the trinket, so it impresses me. I'm gonna give it 4 stars. I think the concept of it and what it's supposed to be doing is really cool, and I'm glad they're venturing into this kind of territory. Now, speaking of trinkets, we're going to our Crimson Protective Trinket. This one's gonna be a 1-cost trinket where we banish it and target opponent reveals 2 cards from their memory, and then if the revealed cards are wind, we will banish them. Compared to our last trinket, this card is going to be a lot more playable. I'm throwing 4 stars. Wind decks, it hinders them greatly because it gets rid of their Veiling Breezes, it negs them if they're tactful surging. Wind wants a lot of cards in memory because that's how they set up for their turn. So this is going to stop them from doing their setup, stop them from some of their cards being as efficient, especially with Tamers running Windstream Mutts and everything relying on wind cards being in your memory. It's great. And with that, the design is going to go ahead and get 3 stars. I think this is exactly what we're needing from trinkets, is interaction that really hinders a strategy for the element itself. Looking at the card and just reading it right off the bat, I wasn't too impressed until I actually started thinking about all the possibilities, what you can do with it. So I'm gonna give it 3 stars for my current impression. I hope it will go up from there, just seeing it being played against Windex, and especially if someone uses it well against me. But right off the bat when the set comes out, we're gonna keep it as it is. Now, we were spoiled a Divine Relic, so it looks like we are getting a Divine Relic maybe every set. The Quicksilver Grail, 0-drop Divine Relic. On enter, banish a non-champion card from your material deck face down. and then you may banish Quicksilver Grell. You may play the banished card. You still have to pay cost for it, however, it is a fast speed activation. I remember when this card was initially revealed, it was sort of like an, oh, is this better than GCR, your Grand Crusader's Ring? That draws a card, this just hides information. How good can this actually be? Just thinking about the card itself and what it can do on your opponent's turn, I feel like this card is extremely playable and it may be slept on by a lot of people. Being able to have either instant speed protection, instant speed disruption, things of that nature just allows you to really surprise your opponent who's not expecting that kind of card to be played on their turn or in response to something. So I'm going to give it 5 stars. I 100% think this card is going to be played as much or slightly less as GCR. It does not draw a card, but it, with the other things it provides, I feel like it's more valuable than drawing a card. The design, I think, is great. Not giving your opponent information is one of my favorite things, allowing for bluffs, allowing for tricks, keeping, you know, your hand close to you. I'm going to give it a 4 star. I think it's a great concept. It being a divine relic as well allows it so players can't abuse this with GCR. So yeah, I'm super excited to see what comes of it. And my impression of the card, I'm gonna just give it a solid 4 stars. I don't think it's gonna be like, oh my gosh, this card's like the one for me. However, I think this card is going to be good seen and played. Tariff Ring, 0 cost. Banish Tariff Ring until the end of turn. Players can't declare attacks unless they pay 2 for each attack decoration. So we're getting a little bit of taxes coming in, which is really great, and I hope the Guardian theme sort of keeps up with that. I feel like the only downside of the card, though, is you cannot activate it anytime you want. You may only activate it during your opponent's recollection phase. So you have to be sure your opponent's going to be doing some big attacks or crazy combos, things like that. Playability-wise, I'm going to give it a 3. I think it's okay, it's average. It's not going to be too much, not going to be too much of a problem. I can see the niche uses for it, but other than that, I don't see it being used much in the current metagame, unless we do go into a very ally-heavy game focus, which then this card will be kind of nutty. Just the design space itself, the design of the card, I'm going to have to give it 5 stars. I really like the concept of preventing your opponent from attacking unless they have to pay the taxes and stacks of other games. Slowly bleeding into this is, I believe, healthy for the game, because it allows for new strategies and prevents other strategies from running rampant. And along that line of 5 stars, I'm slapping a 5-star impression on this card, because I'm super excited to see where Guardian accessories go, and if we're going to get more things like that. And I want to know if that's going to be the whole theme of the Guardian itself. Would be really cool. On to our next card. Tithe Proclamation. Now, before I get into this card, I do want to say this card is going to be an all-star staple against decks that draw. And I feel like that's one of the big problems right now, are decks who just draw too much and can get away with it. So it's a 1-cost, normal, on enter, draw a card. Players can't draw more than 3 cards each turn unless it's their first turn of the game. And if I remember correctly, the errata, or not the errata, but the Q&A for this card is drawing indicates either drawing to hand or drawing into memory. And I feel like that's an important aspect to remember, is because it can count for both. Playability, 4 stars. This card is main board if you really want to shut down combo heavy decks, or it's an instant sideboard card if you're afraid of combo decks that you'll be running into if you don't want to get outvalued. Plus, it replaces itself if you do play from hand, or nets you a card if you do use a floating memory. Design, I'm going to go ahead and give 4 stars. I feel like this design is what we need. It's an interesting mechanic to play around with, and I feel like the devs can do more with it. In addition, they can make cards similar to it, they can make cards that counter it, so I don't think it's unhealthy at all. And I'm going to give it a 5-star impression. I like this card a lot. It's a cleric scripture. What's not to like about it? The art's beautiful, and can't wait to put this under my my silver grill and get my opponent when they try and draw cards. Ooh, the Viridian Protective Trinket. This trinket, I believe, is going to be the trinket of choice, the best trinket out of the 3. It's a 0 cost. It's already been eroded, that's why there's a little art missing, but it's a constant effect. During your turn, water element cards your opponent activate cost 2 more to activate. Water's been running rampant recently, with Water Xander sort of making a gameplay scenario of they have all the fun, you have none, because they just do everything at the end of your turn, just to then at the beginning of their turn to gain a bunch of life, deal you damage, and draw cards. It's really annoying, hard to interact with, so this card itself is going to have to make Xander players actually do more math, which is funny because they already have to do math with Lightweaver's Assault. We're just going to make them, buy them an Abacus maybe, help them out. But playability, we're going to go 4 stars. I think it's way more playable than the other 2 trinkets. Design, I'm slapping it with another 4 stars. I feel like static effects for Regalias is what we need. As much as I like the, oh, banish this to do a thing, static is what players are going to gravitate towards to more, because you constantly get effects. I don't want to pay 1 or 2 memory or floating memory just to have a card that I use for one niche thing and it goes away. Impression, I'm going to give 5 stars. I'm so sick and tired of Water Xander players. It's so frustrating to play against sometimes, especially when they just hit that crucial turning point in the match where all they do is just gain life, and no matter what you do, you cannot out damage 6 or 9 life, and they just remove your board and slowly ping you to death. So I'm going to be playing this in almost any deck, just until Water Xander players get the message. On to the next one. Beast Soul Visage. I think the fact that we're getting elemental Regalias for each class is super, super cool, and I'm super happy that they're going this way, because it's going to make all of the Regalia decks feel unique. Deck building wise, you feel like you're actually having useful choices. It makes you feel like you are impactful for your own deck building. So design, slap a 5-star right there on that. Playability though, I'm not a big fan of this one. You do get that extra attack, but with that Pride 3 requirement, not an early game card usually. You're probably going to play it at level 2 or level 3. You can use it as sort of a finisher. I'm going to throw a 3-star on it. I think it's kind of mediocre. But initial impression, you heard it in my voice when I started talking about the colored Regalia. 5-star, I think it's so cool, especially the fact that you get to turn something into a beast. It's only unique to fire decks. And that 2 extra damage, I'm going to throw that on a squirrel. Make my squirrel a beast. The beast he's always wanted to be. On to the next one we go. Explosive Rune. A mage artifact in fire. You banish it to deal 1 damage to a target ally. Class bonus, if that ally is attacking, deal 2 damage to it instead. I'm going to give it a 1-star impression. I don't think this card is good. I don't think it has any uses, especially if you're playing Rye. I just feel like there's cards that do things better, and this is a Regalia item that does the same thing as Ignite the Soul pretty much, and it takes up one of your limited spots opposed to a deck spot. So impression 1, playability, I'm going to put 1 star as well. And design, I'm going to put 2 stars. I'm just not that big of a fan of this card. I don't feel like it adds much to the game. It doesn't do anything special. I feel like if it was 1 damage to every ally, it would be much more interesting, because it at least could be a board wipe, a prevention, stuff like that. But just 1 damage to an ally or 2 damage to a attacking ally is meh. You can kill you off your own Library Witch though, so maybe if your opponent refuses to swing into you, this is what you use. You resort to your own means of demise. On to the next one. Fire Tongue. Whew, this card. Warriors are eating good with Regalia. I am super happy. As someone who plays a lot of Lorraine, I know I've said it plenty of times, but we need more cards like this. This card is insane. It's a 1-cost fire warrior sword. Class bonus, on attack, you can banish fire element card from your graveyard. If you do, put a durability counter on Fire Tongue. It has 2 attack, 1 durability, so already it swings for 2, which can stay on the field longer. It's an in-soul target even as well, which I'm super happy about. We need more high damage in soul targets. So I'm slapping a 5 on the playability, 5 on the design, and 5 on the impression, because this card is going to be played in every Fire Warrior deck, and even non-Fire Warrior decks when you're running the in-soul package. I love the card. Art looks beautiful, mechanic beautiful, cost, everything. Mwah, nothing more to say about it. On to the next one. Barukan Soul Knife. Assassin's getting a lot of help and support that they've been needing, and I'm super excited for that. It's a 0 cost Assassin Dagger, class bonus, elemental bonus, banish 3 fire element cards from your graveyard, play this from your material deck. And then in addition to that, you have a class bonus, on kill, return it the Soul Knife to your material deck. It's pretty much a way for assassins to continuously get a weapon if they want to have removal or keep going in for some damage, things like that. Playability wise, I'm going to give it 3 stars. I feel like Tristan will really benefit off of this, and maybe even Fire Xander. And it synergizes really well with Xander's level 2 of anything that's rested, dulled, tapped, whatever you want to call it, as you get an additional 1 attack. So this is a 2 damage, 0 cost dagger that keeps coming back if you kill something. So it works really, really well. Design, I'm going to go ahead and give it 5 stars. I love cards that can play themselves for free and have a sort of a unique interaction with themselves, it being the on-kill returning to your deck. It feels like you can really make this a value engine. And with all that I'm talking about it, I'm going to give it a 4-star impression. I think the card is great. The design is beautiful, the artwork, and it all just works out. Okay, speaking of swords that work out, our own Azure Blade. This sword, when it was spoiled, I remember made everyone go, huh, Mordred's actually going to be a champion next set. It's a 1-cost water warrior sword. Class bonus, on enter you may banish any amount of cards with floating memory from your graveyard. For each card banished this way, put a refinement counter on it. Then it gets +2 attack for each refinement counter on it. So if you have 5 floating memory because of Mordred, or just 5 floating memory cards in general, that's an 11 damage sword. And you can run cards like Galahad, since it has 2 durability. He can swing with a sword for 11, and then your champion can swing with a sword for 11 before it breaks. In addition to that, it's a 1 cost, so it's also an in-soul target, and it will get its on-enter effect from your in-soul. So playability, 5. Design, 5. Impression, 5. If I could give it a 6, I would, because this card is great. Am I slightly biased? Maybe. However, I feel like everyone will agree this card is going to be amazing and will unlock a bunch of strategies for warriors and bring our Lineage Break warrior into the spotlight and hopefully into a top deck. Now, speaking of top decks, Water Xander got another toy. It's a 1-cost Cloak of Still Water. Class bonus, on enter draw a card. It's for assassins, and then you can tap it, banish a card with floating memory from your graveyard, prevent the next 3 damage. It is a great anti-aggro card. It helps them set up, and it pretty much gives your late game floating memory more of a use. I don't see why they wouldn't run it. Maybe some people choose to sideboard it, but I feel like your Regalia deck's already meh as it is. You can afford to have this in your slot. Playability, gonna give it 5 stars. I think it's very playable in Water Xander decks. Tristan decks, meh, not really. You really don't want to go super late game. You want to get the high benefit from this card. Design, I'm gonna give it 4 stars. I think the design is great. Even though I really don't want to play against this card, I think the design is great. Impression-wise, 2 stars. Why are we giving assassins more stuff? They don't need it. Xander players are already eating good. But yeah, on to the next card. Wand of Frost. It's a Cleric Mage Wand. It sort of does the same thing as the last card. On enter, you draw a card for a class bonus. However, it's a banish effect of target unit gets -3 until end of turn, which I think is very poor in comparison to some of the other Regalias we've seen. Playability, I'm going to give it a 1. I don't think any mages will be running this, especially since it loses. You have to use itself in order to give that -3 attack. If it was a tap ability that gave like -2 attack, I think it'd be so much better. Design space, I'm putting 2 stars. Once again, if it had a tap ability, it'd be so much better. Maybe if it synergizes more with a cleric champion when we do get it. But as of right now, in the current card pool we have, I don't think it's going to make that big of an impression. And speaking of impression, I'm going to give it 3 stars for myself. I really wanted it to be good. I saw where they were going with it, but it just, I don't want to pay 1 for a card that is going to protect me from 3 attack when that pass card will prevent me from 3 attack as long as I have a floating memory. And with that, we're going to the next one. Wild Heart Liar. Tamers, Tamers, Tamers. All those Sylvie mains are finally getting cards they deserve. It's a 1-cost water reservable tamer instrument. As class bonus, whenever you rest Wild Heart Liar to pay for a reserve cost of Harmony or Melody activation, you buff an animal or beast. I think it's really, really cool because it goes into the theme that you want to do. You want to play Harmonies or Melodies and you want to buff your beast. And in addition to that, it pays for other cards. So after 2 turns, it pays for itself and everything else is insane value, free value after that. Playability, 4 stars. I would say 5 stars, but Tamers really haven't had a good deck, so I can't really say that it's going to really affect them. I know it's going to help them a lot and bring them into the limelight. Design, 5 stars. I love the design, what they went with. It being reservable and you just getting benefits for playing your melodies. It synergizes very well. Impression, flavor, very flavorful. I love it. I'm going to give it 4 stars. I think it's really cool. I feel like it's Alan, made for Alan, but it's going to be run by Sylvie, or maybe some Alan decks as well. Speaking of Tamers, we have Effigy of Gaia. We're now into our Wind Regalia. Class bonus, your champion gets +1 level as long as you control an animal or beast. It's a 0 cost. Whenever your opponent activates an attack card with Cleave, animal and beast allies you control get +2. We finally have our anti-board wipe card in Tamers against Lorraine. Which is super, super fun and helpful because that was the big problem of going wide and then Lorraine just cleaves your board for 3 or 4 damage and you go, oh, well, I wasted the last 3 turns doing this. In addition, it gives you that +1 level to really put in that aggression and help you hit those pride levels. Playability, 5 stars. I think it's going to see play in almost every Wind Tamer deck. Even if you don't take advantage of the cleave, the +1 level, if you control an animal beast, is great. Design, I'm going to go ahead and give that a 4 stars. I feel like design is really, really great. Wish maybe they give you +3 health for cleave just to really stop Lorraine's from buffing up because they can hit high numbers. However, I will not scoff at 2 health. Impression, 5 stars. We needed this. Tamers needed this. It's going to be fun and help deck building a lot. Now, Mage. I feel like mages are getting kind of meh Regalia this set. It's a 0 cost mage staff. Whenever you activate a wind mage spell, put a refinement counter on it. You can remove a refinement counter to put an enlightenment counter, or you can remove 3 refinement counters to suppress an ally. I think it's cool. I think design space, I think 4 stars. Design is really cool. I'm impressed by it. 5-star impression. However, I think it's 2-star playability. I don't personally see it right now doing much. I know there's a lot of enlightenment counter interaction. I'm just looking to do some deck brewing with it. And I may come back and change my mind on it. I'm 2-star, tentative 4-star, depending on when we do our wind review to see what kind of tools mages have gotten. But yeah. Alright, on to the next one. Windwalker boots. The boots that Tristan wears. A 0 cost wind assassin accessory, class bonus. At the beginning of your end phase, if your champion is awake, put a prep counter on them. You can then banish this to draw a card. Only banish it if you have 5 or more preparation counters on them. It synergizes really well with all the assassin cards we have currently out there with Combo Strike, things like that, and it works well with Tristan, allowing her to coup de grace more often, and hey, maybe even Xander's gonna dabble in wind. So, going to rapid fire them off here real quick. Playability, 3 stars. Design, 3 stars. I think it's really cool we're getting more ways to get preparation counters. I just feel like the banish to draw a card only if you have 5 more preparation counters feels like it's shoehorned a little too much. An impression, I'm going to give it 4 stars. I really like it. I want more cards that do something like this, that give access of a ability to other champions. Anyways, next card. Zephyr's Edge. Oh, the third warrior sword, and the third one that I'm going to go 5 playability, 5 design, and 5 impression. I think this card's great. The class bonus on enter, if it's not your materialized phase, Zephyr gets +1 until end of turn. This screams, cast in soul and slap me in from out of game, and I will. It's a 2 damage sword with 2 durability. It combos with Beseech the Winds. You can Quicksilver Grail it if you really want. You'll never materialize this card normally. Actually, in addition to that, if you grab the sword with the level 1 Lorraine, it gets its +1 because it's not your materialized phase. So yeah, that's pretty cool. On to the next one. The first ever Regalia ally. A Majestic Spirit, 12 cost Crux, Intercept True Sight Vigor, champions you control have Spell Shroud. If another Crux element unit you control would take damage, prevent half the damage rounded up. It's a 4/10. I don't know much if this card is going to be good. The spell that casts this card relies on the level of your champion, so this is going to be a Merlin exclusive Regalia card. I don't know if it's worth giving up a Regalia spot for this, so I'm going to say it's about 2, maybe 3-star playability. Design space, I think it's really interesting that we are getting Regalias or allies in our Regalia deck, so I'm going to give 4 stars for that design. I really like that Weebs of the Shore are doing something unique that I haven't seen other games try. And then impression, I'm not the biggest fan of the card. I don't feel like you're going to have many Crux element units on your field, and if you do, you're probably winning the game, so I'm going to give it a 2-star. I think it's neat, just not for me. And we have our Fractured Crown. A 0-cost Luxem Champion Link Warrior Artifact. Linked champions first attack each turn gets +2. And then the class bonus for warriors, that champion also gets +2 health for each unique ally in your graveyard. So we don't have a Luxem warrior. However, we do have Trisket. And this might be a way to make Trisket useful, or it's a way that they're spoiling next set. We're getting a Luxem warrior, and with that, everyone should be afraid of Excalibur and the kind of things that will happen. Now, I think the card's alright. Playability, I'm going to give it a 1-star. I don't see it being played at all in Xander decks. They really don't have a use for it. They can get the +2 attack, I suppose, but who knows. Design, I think it's an interesting thing, especially since it plays around with unique allies. I'll give it 3 stars. Impression, 3 stars. I really want to use it with Trisket. Last but not least, we got our Terror card. 1 cost Covenant of Thorns. This card costs 1 less to materialize if you're a tamer, so great. Will be more prevalent when we get different classes with different elements, sort of foreshadowing. Ally Link. If a damage would be dealt to your champion, that damage is dealt to the linked ally instead. So it's a way to pretty much prevent damage being dealt to you, which I think is really, really cool. It allows you to play something big, and then your opponent has to remove that big ally before they can deal damage to you. It's a pseudo taunt. It's something tamers need to protect themselves. I think it's going to be seeing play a lot. I'm going to give it 4 stars, especially with tamers coming out of the woodworks. Design, I'm going to give it 4 stars. Impression, I'm going to give it 3 stars. I like the concept that you pretty much tell one of your little beasties or animals, be like, hey, jump in front of this for me. Not that Sylvie would ever do that. She wouldn't do that. But it's Alan would, though, 100%. And with that, that is all of our Regalia. And I want to know everyone's thoughts about it. Do you agree with my opinions? Do you disagree? Would you rate a card higher or lower than I did? Go ahead and let me know down in the comment section below. Go ahead and leave a like. Subscribe if you haven't, because I'm going to be making the other set review of the elements. And in addition, if you guys can find the hidden Lorraine in this video, comment down below the timestamp at where you found her. And there'll be a special surprise in the next video. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.